and welcome to Pod 9 of our second series, powered by the lovely people at Netball UK. Now, as always, I'm joined by the glorious Sarah and Mags. So first up, guys, I don't need to ask you what your view's like this week because I can see you both. But what have you been up to recently? What have you done since last week? Give us one thing you're proud of. One thing you're proud of, girls.
I made my daughter Nigella Lawson death by chocolate cake or something like that. Oh.
Mags, when lockdown's over, you've got to make this for a Netball Nation
I will
episode,
bring it.
please.
I will, I promise.
Yeah.
Very impressed. What about you, Sarah? You bought some time there with Mags telling us.
I know, it's a good job. I've not done anything.
Jigsaws?
No, I'm going to start a new jigsaw though. But
Okay.
I've done a bit of baking.
Sarah?
What have you made?
Some chocolate chip cookies, some tea loaf.
Oh.
Yeah, we're going to make a Victoria sandwich for the VE Day on Friday.
Oh, great shout.
Nice. I'm very impressed, girls. You inspired me. I might need to go and get me baking a packet out. Right then, before we start this week's show, we've got something pretty special to share with you. To keep your team netballing with Netball Nation, powered by Netball UK and supported by ASICS, we are giving you the chance to win a pair of ASICS professional double F black netball trainers for you and every single member of your team, so that when you're finally back together, you'll be wearing shoes that let you be the best you can be on court. And we're even going to add print ID to every pair so you don't get them mixed up. To enter, all you've got to do is go to www.keepnetballing.uk, where you can read all the T's and C's. A good little prize, that, isn't it, Mags and Sarah?
Well, did you know what? That's not bad. I think Sarah and I would be able to critique them a little bit better if we had a pair of them on our own feet. But that's
I see what you did
Sarah,
there.
Sarah, what size are you?
Yeah, I'd be able to give an honest opinion then. I'm a size 8.
Yeah, two size 8s. Perfect.
Right. If we get them delivered for next week's show, you can show them off on your screens, okay? Get your feet in the air.
Game on.
Now on today's show, we've got a special guest you will have heard, a lot of you will have heard of if you follow Super League Netball. And on top of that, plenty of high-class chat from Sarah and Mags, of course. Firstly, Super Netball, the world's top netball league, was due to return at the weekend. We'll discuss what's happening in Australia and also New Zealand, where the ANZ League is based, as we wait for netball to return to us. But before all that, we've got plenty to discuss with today's very special guest, Caroline Barker. Now, this is very exciting. This girl's used to be the one asking the questions, but today we are going to be grilling her on her career so far, what she thinks about the state of the world of sport amid this global pandemic, and of course, what it's like working with Sarah, because that's what we all want to know, don't we, girls, eh? Now then, please, I think this deserves a round of applause. Please give a very warm welcome to Caroline Barker. Of course, netball commentator for Sky Sports and BBC Sport, squeezes in presented for a football show, interviews sports stars all over the world, and she managed to make it here on Netball Nation today. So thank you, Caroline.
She'll do anything for anyone, apparently.
What's that?
Said she'll do anything for anyone.
I can't hang up, you know.
We know where you live.
Do you know what, Caroline? We appreciate you joining us because in amongst all this madness, you seem to be one of the only people who's busier than normal.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I am getting a sleep in at night, which I don't normally have time for. So
That's good.
Actually,
How many hours?
sleep.
Yeah.
Depends. I like to time it for different days of the week. You know, at the weekend you like to go a little bit, even though you're doing exactly the same thing. Right?
Yeah.
You got to go a little bit different. So I try to only give myself 3.5 hours sleep at the weekend, just to replicate those wild
Saturday night
nights with you. Yeah.
Do you know what, actually, on that, girls, while we've got you, do you find that you still do feel like it's the weekend, or are all days merging into one for you? Because I still get the weekend tingle.
I get a
what's
Friday.
the weekend tingle?
That Friday feeling where you go,
All right.
it's the
It's the
weekend.
weekend.
I was avoiding asking her that, Caroline. I get the excitement of a Friday, and then the weekend's a bit of a damp squib. I think because like work and everything stops at the weekend, I'm almost a little bit like there's nothing to give me a schedule, so I'm a little bit mopey at the weekend sometimes.
So you get a Friday high, and then
I get a
Saturday
Friday
and
high,
Sunday.
and then Saturday, Sunday's a bit.
What about you, Mags?
I just get a Sunday low. I don't get that tingle like you get on a Friday or a Saturday, whatever that tingle may be. But when Sunday comes round and you realise it's Sunday, it's like, oh God, tomorrow's Monday. But I'm not even doing anything on
That's it.
Monday.
The Sunday night blues without anything to do on a Monday. How is that a thing? But Caroline, thank you so much for joining us, like I say, but what have you been up to? Tell us what life has been like for you during this pandemic.
Oh, you want to see how many things I've decorated? I thought about my sofa's there, and I'm not entirely sure. It's bright yellow, my sofa, and I did at one stage contemplate painting it. I wondered how that would work out, but I didn't.
Painting the sofa?
Yeah.
As opposed to reupholstering.
Yeah.
Throw some cushions on. Throw some cushions on.
Whoa. Reupholstering. Have you tried to make scrubs for the NHS? You can't get material for love nor money. Every other day, my mum's on the phone to me. Have you managed to get material yet? I sent her some Dylon so she could dye it, because you can do sheets with it as long as it's. I've been through all of this. As long as it's thick enough cotton and good enough quality cotton, you can dye it. So she didn't want to give them pink sheets. She wanted to dye them the blue of the normal scrubs, and of course they've come out purple, haven't they? They've come out like the colour of this ball behind me.
It's, to be fair, it's a nice colour.
It is.
It could have come out worse colours.
This is
and
my,
now your mum's having to sleep in a sleeping bag.
What's wrong with that? Sleep below the stars or something like that.
I love this. 5 minutes in and we're getting DIY tips from Caroline Barker. This is great.
I have made a table. I made a bike shed at the weekend.
Really?
Have you got a bike?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Have you got a bike?
That could come.
I just went down to the train station, put up some racking, and then nipped off. People forever nicking bikes. I just put them back in. So I made a bike shed. What else have I done? I painted every fence possible. I put up some trellis. Yeah, I'm bored.
Girls, how unproductive do we all feel right now?
Also, where does Caroline live? Like, are you the good life? You've got trellis and fence and bike sheds and.
Second day in, I tried to buy chickens. Couldn't get them for love nor money. Yeah,
Have they been locked down with COVID as well?
Yeah, they have. They have.
Oh,
No, they haven't. It's because there was a shortage of eggs, wasn't there? So everyone went out and everyone
Bought chickens.
chickens. Well, it didn't strike me that I didn't have a coop to put them in. I thought I could build.
Well, you could have knocked one up in a day, couldn't you? At this rate.
Yeah. Oh, it did. It took me a while. The bike shed took me 6 hours. But
6 hours to. I think that's really fast. 6
Well,
hours.
I think that's good.
well.
I mean, it took me like about a year of DT to make a pointless wooden box.
Still got it. Have you still got it?
Yeah,
I've still got
I
my
painted it. I
toothbrush
mean,
holder.
pride and joy, glitter and everything.
Hey, Caroline, aside from DIY,
Oh yeah, sorry.
what kind of work stuff have you been getting up to during this pandemic?
I'm just going to inappropriately leave that netball there so you think that I'm actually athletic. Get rid of that for the moment. Work-wise has been as busy. So right from the very start, as Sarah will remember, way back when in maybe February, was it, when we did the Off the Court with you, we decided to get on Zoom, to get on technology and just keep Off the Court going. Because as all of you will know, hence the fact that you've kept Netball Nation going, well done to you lot, is that actually for netball to continue, you've got to create that conversation and you have to keep that conversation going. So chatting to Tamsin and Sky, we decided that we just keep trying to do it, and hopefully people would be all right initially with how rough and ready, and still rough and ready, it all looks. And just accept that and think, actually, if I'm getting good chat, download that, I can do that, conversations, update with all the news that's happening. And yeah, it might be not wrapped in the perfect box, which I think has got better as we've gone along. So we try to do that, keep that going. World Service, I still do a show on a Saturday morning on the World Service, and every so often I sneak some netball in. Don't tell anyone. I'm like, oh, have you seen this story? Oh, there's this really good story. Yeah, it's netball again. So we'll get netball on. So yeah, I've been doing that, and I start properly with Sky again in July. So it'll all ramp up then. But yeah, National League board meetings, other shows that we've been doing. So it's busy. It's busy.
And how are you finding that transition from studio to, albeit a very lovely home that you've worked very hard on? How are you finding that difference in broadcasting from different areas?
I think it's more relaxed. I don't know if you all feel this too, but that familiarity that you all have in the studio anyway is there, right? Because clearly you like each other, or at least tolerate each other on occasions, and that comes across. And for me, that's what's been the advantage, is as soon as people are in their homes, they just relax a bit more. I mean, we don't want to see them lying full back, scratching their bellies and
Sarah.
No, well, I'm going to say, it's very nice to see you up at this time of day. What time is it? I think there is a much more relaxed feeling to everything, and we're getting insight that we wouldn't normally have. And people haven't got that excuse of, I'm really busy, I can't do it, because they're doing nothing. So
I was going to say, have you found that people more willing to talk and more willing to kind of open up as well during this time?
Yeah, well, maybe it's a lot of them we've been doing with the video as well, so they can't do the I want to ask that question as they probably normally do to me on the radio. But yeah, they absolutely will. And also I think it's the combinations. Again, the joy of what you've got is that you all love netball, and Mags, when I see you and Sarah in particular giving each other niggle, you know it comes from a good place.
Absolutely.
You know that wind
We
up
love the Bayman.
is genuine. Exactly. And you're seeing that because I think you're getting a couple of footballers on together, or a couple of managers, or different sports. They're the ones that I've really loved when you've seen other sports interacting. So there's been quite a few that I've seen the BBC do with women's sports, and get a number of my mate Joe Curry, who's their women's sports reporter, has got a load of different women from different sports together, and just we're all going through similar stuff, aren't we? Whether we play sport, talk about sport, whether we do whatever job it might be in life, we're all going through this because we're all locked down together. We're not all locked down together. They're just going to pop out. So we're experiencing the same thing. And when you've got that joint experience, then you'll share and you'll talk about it, and it all becomes that family together.
I think that's really true. And I think for a lot of listeners as well, still being able to have that familiarity of hearing you and giving them some sort of structure to their week has been great. I know a few people have been in touch with Netball Nation. In particular, we had a nurse get in touch to say it was kind of a comfort and she really enjoyed listening to it on her way into work. So Mags and Sarah, obviously we've been doing it from our homes. I've not asked you girls, how have you found the difference between broadcasting from a studio to home?
Well, it's just like Caroline. Sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, up until this week, it was the same because I was barely dressed and hadn't washed for a few days.
Up until this week?
I had a shower today.
For me, was it?
yeah, just for you, Caroline, just for you. But no, I think it's actually. It's not. I thought it was going to be really difficult because you can't we couldn't see each other until we've done this week, and I thought that would be harder. But it's actually just been really nice, and I think it is a little bit like, gonna check in for a chat with the girls at this time. So it's nice to see everyone and chat to everyone.
It is nice, isn't it, Max?
I absolutely love it because I'm sat here a bit. For those who are old enough to remember Kenny Everett, I'm kind of like, you can see this bit at the top that looks all sporty and what have you, but then below there's like suspenders and high heels.
Oh, you better show us.
Yes, Max! By stark contrast, I've got my pyjamas on.
But no, in all seriousness, no, it's lovely because it is within the comfort of your own home. You've not had to battle through the blooming motorways. I mean, the M62 for me is like a car park trying to get anywhere from one place to the other. And it's that kind of thing you look forward to it. It's that chat with friends over the radio.
Closest
and now on screen.
Closest thing to normality at the minute, really,
Absolutely.
Isn't it? And obviously we know, if anything, if there's been any lessons learned, it's that health is a priority. That's definitely what we've learned the last few months. But for people like us who work in sport, we know it's a huge part of it, and we want it back. Selfishly, maybe, but we want sport back. Caroline, what do you make of the world of sport as a whole at the minute? Do you think it should return in the summer? Because we're hearing a lot of talk from people. It's kind of divided, isn't it?
It can only come back when it's safe, right? First and foremost. But there's been a couple of interesting articles in the Telegraph, obviously Rebecca Myers' piece as well. I don't know if you've all seen it, about whether women's sport should come back first. So actually that momentum that we saw from, not to mention we were at the Commonwealth Games, but when we were in Australia and netball just exploding off that point, why should that be lost? And actually, is there a moment where netball, which can condense so well, I know it's kind of knackered your knees when you've been playing there, the amount of back to back netball, but you can do it. It's done in tournament situations. Yeah. So is there a way of condensing the league? And is there a way of bringing netball or women's sport back and really celebrating all that we see? Premier League, you get the feeling it's going to happen, and then the knock-on effect is if the Premier League completes, then the EFL will look to, will they have to complete because of promotion and relegation? Will the National League, will it knock on all the way through? But I think the EFL in the past couple of hours have talked about the fact that it's got to happen by July the 31st. The league's got to complete. So I think maybe everyone's got to give it up now and just say, look, it's going to be the new year when we're all safe and going. No one knows. Everyone loves to cling on to a bit of hope. We love having something to talk about, even though we could probably find whatever to talk about. But it's got to be safe. And if you're taking people away from the front line, if you're putting anyone's safety in any doubt at all, then you can't do it. As much as we want to see it, you know, perhaps we've got to give the world what they want, which is Sarah and Mags duetting every week. Maybe that's what the world
Finally.
needs now.
Yes.
Your tune, pick your tune.
Hey, I'm not letting you get away with that. That's happening at the end of this podcast, girls. Get your thinking caps on. What you're going to sing.
Yeah.
I think the worry around the Premier League, like, one is like the players as well. I think that they might have a little bit of a problem getting the players back at the minute. Like they're aware that they'd be putting themselves at risk. But I think the Premier League culturally in this country is such a big deal and such a part of normal life that if that goes back, how do you then stop people just going to the park to play football? Like, people then assume that life's a little bit more normal, and everything to do with watching football. People go to the pub with the mates and have some drinks. People go to games and meet up with everyone and have a chat. Like the whole culture around that is basically saying it's okay now. And I think that's a really dangerous thing with something like the Premier League. Like, there's a lot of money involved. We know that, but you kind of send in a message that's wider than sport, I think, by going back with something that big.
And Sarah, is the driver then not about the lack of sport, but about the finances then? Because that seems to be the underlying word that's not spoken about, that it's money. It's all the money that's being lost. Because let's be right, it's sport, but it's also a business. And people are losing money hand over fist through this business. Are they then prepared to put people's health at risk as a consequence of coining it in?
Well, yeah, I mean, Premier League are probably losing more in about an hour than the Super League losing.
Than we'll ever see in a lifetime.
Full stop.
Yeah.
For the year. So, I mean, it's huge amounts of money, but I think, like Caroline said, you've got to do it for the right reasons. Actually, I love the idea of women's sport coming back first.
How fab would that be?
Yeah.
Do you think that's likely?
No.
No. Me neither.
Again, it's about actually where does women's sport want to position itself. And I know that I've seen Matchroom over the past couple of days announce that they're going to be re-showing some of their tournaments. So from darts to Fast Five to whatever it might be, they're going to start showing them on their channels. And what they have done with Fast Five is try and condense sport, and we've seen it can work, right? So does netball think, okay, we're going to have this showcase weekend? If the Premier League does come back, nothing else is going to come back around it, you feel? Because how can it to at least January? So we've got to be thinking, what happens day one? So when the switch goes on day one and the government says you can go back, you can have crowds in, how's that going to look? So I would hope that England Netball, the Super League at the moment, are sat down thinking, right, the minute we get that go ahead, what are we going to do? We're going to be first off the block to say, this is how we're going to react. So how are we engaging with fans, with players, with coaches, with clubs, with the media, with those that broadcast us, to say, okay, here's our plan for day one. What does it look like? I was encouraged by hearing Liz Nichol over the past couple of interviews that she's done, talking from the INF perspective, that they are going to try and reshift the calendar and make it work on an international scale, because that's got to happen. But there's got to be so many things put in place, and we have to start thinking about them now. The problem is, as we all know, this is a sport built wonderfully on volunteers. So it's about putting an arm around everyone and saying, you're coming with us. At the same time, how can we make sure that everyone's safe, but that everyone has an input into how we look? If netball can harness that brilliant power in everyone that's there and bring in the momentum and talk to the broadcast partners and the rest of the media and say, this is what we're going to do day one, you're going to love it, then I think netball has a real opportunity to do it and fight in a space that's going to be a lot more open when we come out the other side.
Do you think, though, Caroline, that it's likely that netball will be able to come out of this in a healthy way under the circumstances?
We've all sat when there's been 10, 15 people watching the game. We've all been part of it when we've all helped create that game, and there's a huge spotlight on it. And that's what I mean about you've got to bring everyone along. You've got to get the views of Mags and Sarah. You've got to get on the phone to Jade Clark. You've got to talk to the coaches, talk to Debbie Hallis. You've got to talk to all these people, get them together and say, what is it we're all going to do together? Because the will is clearly there, because netball has done it for year after year after year after year on their own. But now this light's on it. So I absolutely think netball can be in that better place, because financially they've struggled. I don't know if you've seen the stories this week that actually there are players playing over in Australia who are actually on more money than they would be as a result. And so I would hope, given the shoestrings that clubs have worked on before, that they can be in that great place. Now, we've just got to give them enough structure around it to help them.
Caroline, can you explain why, for anyone listening, can you have a go, why they are on more money now as a result of being furloughed?
It's to do with their government, their version of their government financial scheme that they've had. And I think there was a little bit of sponsorship put into that too. Similarly with the furlough situation, I don't want to speak for any players here in the UK. What's been brilliant is the upturn with the Players Association and seeing more of the players in the Super League sign up to that too, and this collective responsibility. But you might have, I guess, some players that are being paid through their Super League club, but are also being paid through their other work too. No one is going to be in a financially better situation in that respect. I think they're saying nominally in what they're earning because of money and funds that have come in. There might be some that are, again, in this country that have taken relief on mortgage situations, have taken on some of the government's money and support in that respect as well. But no one wants to be in this situation, do they? So it's now how we can come out the other side of it. And I hope I politically dodged that. How we can come out the other side of it and say, actually, we have been in situations like this before. Not this current situation, but financially, the pressure's been squeezed before. And now's a brilliant time to take on board the views of everyone and think about that day one and where you go from here.
And also, I think when like we're talking about Liz Nichol wanting an international calendar, surely this is a massive opportunity. Like netball has been tipped on its head. Like seasons aren't going to finish, some are going to start late, all the rest of it. Now's probably the time where you get everyone sat down and go, look, it's not ideal, but you guys can move things. So why don't we just thrash out an international calendar now and make it work for everyone? Because at the minute traditionally Australia dictated the international calendar and everyone kind of went along with it. Whereas now you've got great leagues in England and New Zealand. You've got South Africa becoming more of a dominant world force again. You've got Jamaica traveling to play more. Like you need a calendar that can work for everyone. And I think Liz Nichol is absolutely right in prioritising that. And now is actually probably quite a good time to do it.
And what about the obviously not back as well would be the likes of you being a Super League coach, Sarah, having international players within your squad. Do you think there would be the capacity for them to rework the calendar so there wasn't a massive impact on coaches losing their players midway through a season?
Yeah, and that's what they've got to do. Like they've got to make it work. Like it's never going to be ideal, like for everyone, but you've got to make it work as best you can. And there's got to be give and take from different people, whether that's the Suncorp League, Super League, the ANZ in New Zealand, being slightly flexible on where you place your league because you know where your international windows are and they're set dates, and that's when you're going to lose players, and not this kind of random that we have at the minute where you have international windows and then one team goes, now we're going to play an extra test series, and players are all over the place. So I think that there's definitely opportunity to make it work better for players, for coaches, and for international teams.
Yeah, well, hopefully then that gives us some optimism to look forward to. But Caroline, while we've got you, let's chat about you specifically. Now we've covered this pandemic. I knew you were going to say that. Talk us through, for anyone listening who's interested in your career path and where it started, talk us through how you got into broadcast and in particular the netball commentary side of things. Oh, Mags is popular.
Who is it, Mags?
It's me, mother. Hang on a minute. I'll put her on.
Oh, yeah, let's have a chat.
I've just told her, sorry, can't talk. I'm in a meeting. Anyway.
can't do
You're
that.
thinking,
to
you're
your
not
mum.
even working. Oh, I've just done it. I've just used the magic finger.
Stop that with your mum.
You're too used to doing that, Mags. You did that too quickly.
I know. Shh, moving on.
It's a dance move, wasn't it?
Ooh.
But yeah, Caroline, just talk us through how you started out and how you got to where you are now in brief, because you've had one heck of a career today.
I'll be quick. I'm the last of 6 kids, so when I came
Wow.
out, my mum had a hysterectomy, so I was the only one of the 6 kids that didn't actually, do
Oh.
the full Monty. So that's good. Particularly when you're 6th, right? You want to come out the stomach.
Yeah.
Nowhere else in between. So my eldest brother is actually 18 years older than me. So they had 4 kids. The 5th one was an accident. I tell him that all the time. So I was born as the friend for the accident. So chat, but with a load of boys in the house, four brothers, and went along from the very first, I think maybe 2 or 3. My mum was quite ill when she had me. I mean, you'd be if you came out 6 foot straight away. So she was quite ill. So she had to stay in hospital. So my dad took me straight along within the first couple of weeks to watch Chelmsford City play. So I was strapped to him with everyone around it. And from that moment, I fell in love. When a team grabs you by the heart and it squeezes it, it doesn't let you go. And that collective thing of sport, watching with your family, wanting to be with them, to interact, to have something to talk to them about, got me from that very first moment. I played netball to county level, again, just because I was so tall. It was a bit like I always used to win 400 metres until the point at which they started catching up with my height. But from, I was a devil on that by the fact I could do 3 laps and they'd still be on the first half. So I used that to my advantage. That and the fact that the boys used to stick me in goal or put me in front of the wickets and just like throw balls at me, and went to the hard school of Knox with them growing up. Chatting. I went to school in the local area and decided that I quite liked, they listened to BBC Essex all the time. So I thought, I'll maybe go and volunteer. And at the time, my club, Chelmsford City, went kaput. And there was a guy called Jonathan Overend, who was the sports reporter at Chelmsford City, at BBC Essex. And he stood up at the meeting and said, it's all right. We'll do this, bang, 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 bang. And he organised and galvanised everyone. And again, I fell in love. I was like, I want to be him. You saved the football club. You made my dad very happy. And that was probably, prepubescent and my voice going up and down then. So I went to work at BBC Essex, answering the phones, which I think is how Dermot O'Leary started, also at BBC Essex, as I was always told. Brilliant sports department there. Did that all the way through university. I was the early morning reporter, so I'd go out and report on the fact that the mayor of Clacton was changing, and they did this thing where they threw rock buns at him at 5 o'clock in the morning. So that would be me. The rock buns are coming.
Was that just for sport, or that was just a thing of being the mayor?
Don't think that way. You are. Is there not rock buns up and down the country?
We'll have a game of that next time.
Yorkshire puddings. Yorkshire puddings.
Yeah.
Totally rip you all at that.
They don't show that on Towie, do they?
No. Oh my goodness. There you go. That's what the world's missing right now. A bit of rock bun throwing. It was something like that. It was 5 a.m, so it could have been anything that I was going through. And I said, I quite like this. And they said, you're going to have to go get your English degree and get your law qualifications if you want to do this. Went to do English. I started writing. I was a Royal Court young writer, so I used to write plays and things. And I had this at the end of university, an offer to go to Central St Martin's to do dramaturgy. So go and be a playwright, design, create plays, do everything around it. Or I was offered a chance to go for the BBC, and they paid for my qualification to go through, and I opted for the BBC because I was tight, being the last of 6 hand-me-downs. This is my dad's jumper from 1952. So they paid for me to go and do my broadcast journalism qualification. Did that, had an option at the end. I could go and work for a commercial station because I was working for Essex FM and BBC Essex, or I could go the BBC route. Went the BBC route, freelance, was working at BBC London, fantastic patch, got to do amazing things, follow Chelsea into Europe, do everything, a little bit of everything, and really loved it. They loved the fact that I knew football. When Jackie Oatley did her first broadcast commentary, they went and sat me next to her, so it looked like BBC London were first with it too. So I did that alongside them, and it was just one of those fortune moments, I think, in that every time anyone said to me, do you want to do something, I said yes. I took 1 year staff at the BBC. I've been freelance ever since, which means I don't have to stay around in one place too often, so I don't get found out, and then I can just move on. And apart from, actually, for the first time since I started, I am taking a proper staff contract in July. So I can't tell you what I'm doing yet, but
Oh,
yeah,
exciting.
it's all going to go again, and try and duck the employer.
We've all been there. Caroline, do you feel like you're living your dream? Do you feel you fulfilled what you set out to do?
There's only one thing I'm really missing, which is my daily dose of Sarah Bayman. That's
I knew it.
I have her as my ringtone. So in the morning when I set my alarm, it goes, "What just happened? What just happened? What just happened?"
Oh my God, that must get you up to turn that off.
It's the only alarm I need subtitles on. Of course I'm lucky. I am blooming lucky. And you get to do wonderful things. And I've been to every major sporting event, which is fantastic. But the best thing is you get to talk to people and hear their stories. And I talk back at them whether they want to hear it or not. And that's what we get to do. We get to tell brilliant stories. So yeah, lucky.
And you're living proof that hard work and just being a good person will get you far. But also, in that industry, you have to never stop learning or working, do you? What does prep look like for you before you go and do anything?
I was in preparation for this. I was trying to find my notes we took to the Commonwealth Games. I have got a folder on every. So I do them in raw form. So I write them down because that's how I feel like they go in, almost like tattooed. And what's that Harry Potter film when he makes her do, or she makes him do lines and they appear on the back of his hand? It's not quite that sadistic. Go and watch that one, kids. I feel that if I write them down, they go in, and then I take a photo of them. And on my old other devices are available, but my device that I can annotate on too, I have 2 different copies. So I make sure that I've written it, consumed it, and it goes in, and then everything else around that is finding the story. So what's the nice flowery bits you can put on it? I try and get to a venue early. That probably annoyed Sarah a bit when we were in Australia, but you want to soak everything in. You want to see that point that we were at dinner the night before with the Aussies, and the confidence there was revolting, wasn't it? Yeah, it really was bitter, that meal. The meal after was brilliant, but the night before, and so you're trying to consume everything else around you. So if you've done all that prep work, you know the structure to everything. If you put your underwear on in the morning, then you're ready to go, and everything else is just the niceties around it. So it's trying to consume then everything, the little stories. There's the girl that was the program seller on the corner, and you go and chat to her because she's, I know, 8 or 9, and you say, "Oh, how come you're here doing this?" It's my, Shani Layton's my idol, or whatever it might be. And so I followed her, and I wanted to come and be here. And then there was this opportunity to sell programs, and then you meet players that were program sellers at the first bit, and you connect the dots, and you've got that glorious story that comes around it, where you think, whether I love netball or not, I'm going to engage in that moment because you've drawn me in on the story. And that content is king across anything. If you can make someone enjoy it when they don't give a fig about that sport, then you're a winner.
Absolutely, and it's a lot to do with the humans that are involved. And you got your notes out there, Caroline. Let's touch on that, because Sarah, I'm going to bring you in here. Talk to us.
Or you just copy Caroline's notes.
But obviously you two know each other well. You've worked together. What was it like specifically calling the Commonwealth Games final when England won gold? What was that like for you guys?
I don't know what just happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you have any idea how popular that basically your commentary was going to become, and how much it was going to get played?
I think before we went on, I can't even remember if it was one of the producers or we said to each other, I think Caroline probably said to me, "Well, don't worry, because it's 4 a.m, so no one's going to watch anyway." And and so then I was like, oh, that's okay, that's not
Relax.
so bad. Yeah, and then obviously,
lying.
I know,
like
lying through her teeth. And then at the end, 5:30 a.m. in the UK, and my phone's going absolutely mental with all these people who've just watched it. And I was like, all right, yeah, that actually was something really special. And it was special in terms of in the arena, and England winning, history being made, all the rest of it. It was special, but I don't think at the time we probably recognised how big it would be outside of that, at home, for I mean, it was always going to be big for English netball, but immediately the response was massive. And considering it was on the other side of the world, that was a little bit of a, oh, yeah, that works.
Did you plan any of it or not? You know, or was it just off the cuff emotion? That was how you felt there and then.
If anyone's heard the extended version, which is where I try and list the players, they go, what did I say? I think, everything, all of you.
All those notes, you can't even think of the name.
No, they're in front of me doing backflips. We didn't know who it was. No, you can't. Anyone who's listened to it knows we didn't plan it. You can't, because the thing that you love about sport is it's that emotion of that moment, isn't it? So you could think, oh, maybe I'll say this, and you'll know in your back of the mind that that's not been done before, or that's like Jay Clark when she came on for what a moment. So in all of it, that gets lost. She comes on for 150th cap, and you're in that moment as well. You think, oh, how special is that? And then all of those things that add up to it, you can't. It's just what's in front of you, and it was bizarre because we just got in a bus afterwards. You had to go, didn't you?
Yeah, I flew out that night.
Yeah.
So,
I don't even remember.
Wow.
We got on a bus, and all the Aussie commentators were on the bus with us. And to be fair, they were pretty gracious considering they're Australian. And Sherelle McMahon and people like that. It was sort of like a bus full of Australian legends who were all actually really pleased for England, as much as they could be. So we just got on this bus and sort of went back to Gold Coast, didn't we? And it was just weird. It was like that massive thing's just happened. Everyone's lost their mind. And then we just get on a bus and go, right, what's everyone doing for dinner?
It was that, wasn't it? It's bizarre because we always stand up when we do commentary, but the Australians always sit down. And it felt at the end like we were 10 feet tall, didn't it? Right, that far. And we looked across, both of us. There was a point, I remember, we looked across and they were just sat there. And it was like, you know, when you have a really sodgy Sunday roast, and they're just there, aren't they? Just nothing.
Can I just ask you, was there any banter between yourselves and the Australian commentary team prior to the game? Or are they pretty cool as well before, you know, you go fly?
Well, like Caroline said, the night before we went for dinner, and they would have all put the house on Australia winning without a blink of an eye. Like, there was no banter because there was just nothing to discuss. It was just like, okay, so how many are Australia winning by? That was the question.
Right.
Wow.
Like, how many do Australia win by? Because they were so confident of Australia winning and how they'd gone through that tournament that it was just a matter of, is it going to be a blowout or is it going to be a good game? That was the kind of question. And so afterwards, there was obviously, you know, we had plenty more to say. But I think, and like I said, to be fair to them, they took it pretty well in terms of acknowledging that it was definitely needed for netball. Like, Australia winning everything all the time, and Australia New Zealand finals after 30 odd years, it's a little bit dull, isn't it? So, but yeah, they were good fun.
Yeah.
And go on, sorry, Caroline.
No, they were just the whole tournament, because I was there on my own until Glory Hunter came in for the semis. So I was there with the broadcast crew that then pump it out to the rest of the world. So the Aussies were handling that. So I'd spoken to them before, but I'd never met them in person. Just when you are that far away, they do their stuff, we do our stuff, and never the two meet. So to have met them all, to be with Jenny Woods as well, that New Zealand commentator that was brought in, because you have to remember they thought it was going to be again Australia, New Zealand in the final. So she was there to do it for Sky in New Zealand, and they were going to do it for Australia, and actually for the BBC to take a punt. And they listened to us and to Tracy Pinder, who's a brilliant producer at the BBC, when we said, you know what, I just think, and the BBC didn't have to invest in sending me out there. And they certainly didn't have to invest in Sarah.
Certainly didn't have to waste that money.
I mean, what? But they did. And actually, there was a little bit of relief. I don't know if there was for you, Sarah. I went, oh, thank goodness I wasn't wrong. Yeah,
it's similar because at World Cup, because at World Cup, I think it was a little bit the opposite in terms of everyone thought England were going to make the final. And when they didn't, like at the BBC was scrambling around for a whole new opening montage. Like everything had been done for England to make the final, and that's like the other side of it. And when Caroline's talking about Jenny Woods, you know, her experience of Gold Coast would be completely different to ours, because New Zealand came fourth, were getting torn to shreds in the media, and she was kind of sent out to like go and find this player and ask them why they're so bad. And it's like,
Wow.
so the experience is completely different depending on how the team do. And even though you're not there to support the team, it makes a difference, because, you know, for those New Zealand players are coming into interviews like already upset, backs up, ready to defend themselves. Where you go and interview the England players after Commonwealth Games, and they're like,
but for you, Caroline and Sarah, because Caroline, I'm aware that you have got other work apart from us three don't, but you do. If you could sum up that experience in one word, what would it be, Caroline?
Broken.
Broken. Sarah, have you got anything more to add to that, or would you agree with broken?
Yeah, just do a noise.
Broken.
Broken probably sums it up. Yeah.
Great. Well, I'm really glad it had a great effect on you both.
The word you expected, is it, Emma?
I was thinking elated, excited, overjoyed, broken.
Yeah, of course it was all those things. Of course it was all those things. But at the same time, you said, what just happened? And we just looked at each other. What just happened?
Yeah.
Don't know what happened. If I'd watched it back now, which I won't because I hate listening to myself, but if I watched it back now, I think we had this conversation whenever the anniversary was. See? When was that? A week ago? 2 weeks ago? It was in lockdown. And we haven't watched it back, but we probably should, because I don't know what happened. You're in that moment, and how wonderful just to lose yourself in anything, just to have lost yourself.
Yeah, immerse yourself fully.
Did.
Caroline, do you ever listen to yourself back to give you? Never.
No, I've sat in. You have to go and do appraisals, don't you? And they go through everything, and I am so self-conscious. I'm a nervous person. Sarah will probably tell you, if I go into I have to really G myself up to go into broadcasting, which you would think every Saturday morning when I do, and this isn't bragging, but when I do the World Service, my producer will say in my ear, just 60 million people listening, don't worry.
No pressure.
That doesn't
you don't need friends like that, Caroline. You do not need friends like that.
That doesn't worry me, but being in a room with just a few people, or I have no confidence whatsoever. So listening back, can't do it.
And obviously it's it's amazing to get someone like you on, for people to hear it from your perspective, as someone that's got so far in their career. But what's the worst feedback and the best feedback you've ever been given?
Don't go looking for it. Either end of the scale.
Really?
Don't go looking for it. I don't have my notifications on Twitter, for example. You just can't. The people I listen to and I trust, Sarah, people you work with, and you know in yourself, I'm sure, Emma, you do. I'm not sure you have, but there might be a moment where you've been broadcasting, you thought that wasn't right, or I didn't do that, or I didn't
most
do
weeks
that better. No, but it's important that you have those. We're always learning, right? And when people say to me about, I don't know whether to go and do that work experience, or I don't know whether to go and do that job, you should always try and find value in anything you do. Don't look as money as value. By value, I mean try and do something different. Try and do something that gives you that fear. Try and do something that will challenge you, and try and do something that will improve you in whatever way it might be. It might be, when we went out to Australia, we met some brilliant people, and those commentators, even though we were on the wind up, I still talk to them, and they're great human beings. And we meet wonderful people every day of our lives. Maybe not so much at the moment, maybe through the window, or however it might be, maybe communicating on technology. And you find value in that all the time. So don't go looking for the negative, don't go looking for the positive, but trust the people around you. Trust the great producers that you meet, the great cameramen, lighting, whatever it might be, the great pundits that you work with, the wonderful people that are part of that, because they know their sport, they know what they're talking about, and I trust their opinions too. So don't go searching for it, but you know in yourself when you've done something wrong, and it is healthy still to have a debrief after everything.
Definitely. And before we let you go, with that in mind, what one bit of advice would you... We're keeping you here. What one bit of advice would you give to anybody who aspires to have your kind of career?
Find that one thing that's your... I don't want to say brand, but I'm saying brand. But what's your one thing? What's your one thing that you are passionate about, that you are knowledgeable about, that you can talk from the heart about, and then go and do that? There is no excuse. We're broadcasting on our phones right now. Oh, some of us are very flashy technology. It's just to make our voices sound better. But you can do it from your phone, and it's free if you've got the right data package. But you can go and film yourself. I know it's this great guy, and I nearly said kid, but he's growing up since the first time I met him, Max Hayes, and he loves Nottingham Forest. So he went out with his phone and his dad. I think he might have been 12 at the time, and he said to the club, "Oh, can I interview some of the players?" And now Match Day with Max is kind of the go-to thing. He does interviews with players and he talks passionate about them. He's now got a gig on the BBC. He's booting me out, and that's all because he's talking from the heart about something that he knows. You can get found out. You can do all the research in the world and be prepared for absolutely everything, so that you don't get found out in that respect. But love what you do. Enjoy the preparation as much as they're talking to you right now. And sometimes every day, and I try and do this when I walk into a venue, when I walk into the BBC, when I go to Sky, is do that little thing. There's going to be moments when you're knackered, right? There's going to be moments when you're thinking, I'm not up for this today. When mental health wise, maybe you're not feeling it in that room. But if you can do that one thing where you stick your feet on the ground, you think, those doors I'm about to walk into, that's Old Trafford, or that's the Copper Box, or that's the Sky Studios, or that's knocking on someone's door who's going to tell me about how they started out in sport, and I'm going to have a conversation with someone that I've not had before. If you can root yourself in that moment and be part of that moment, then everything else will follow.
Oh my word, Caroline.
That's amazing.
Do you know what?
Did it look like I was reading that off the auto cue?
I'm going to take those fabulous words of wisdom and share them with my daughter, because she's done a media degree. And she doesn't want to do what you do. She doesn't want to be in front of the camera and things. She's got...
I didn't, Max.
Did you not?
No, I just wanted to tell stories.
Yeah.
Don't chase fame either. Don't, it's about finding something that you can do to tell a story. And that might be by the way you hold a camera. It might be by the way you write a script. It might be the way you talk about it. But it's fun.
I'm going to share those words with her.
Great. If you do, can you tell her I like Cadbury's Whole Nut? I can still post them.
Leave it with me.
Right.
Caroline Barker, you have been incredible. Thank you so much for jumping on Netball Nation, having a chat. Oh, what have you got for us?
I was just trying to find that photo I took of Sarah.
Get it out. Present it to the
dodgy photos knocking about.
I was half
your
expecting
contributions.
I thought your screen was going to go dark then, Sarah. I thought you were going to leave us.
Yeah. Does your screen do this?
Yeah. But Caroline, thank you so much. Genuinely, that's been so insightful. So thank you. Best of luck painting your sofa, and hopefully we'll speak to you again
fingers
soon.
crossed. Let us know how it goes.
Yeah.
It might be a bit tacky to start with. The good thing is, if you come round and sit on it, you go away with the extra gift of your bottom being painted too, right? What could you want?
We'll look forward to yellow bums. Thank you.
Take care,
Thank you
Caroline.
so much,
Thank
Caroline.
you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Super Netball in Australia was due to return last weekend, but due to COVID-19, the season's been postponed until late June, with the league saying it'll make an announcement at the end of May with the details of when it's going to start. Now, there have been reports over the last few days that it could return by early June, with Australia not experiencing as much of a serious spread of the virus as the UK. Sarah, over to you first. What do you make of the possibility of Super Netball returning in a couple of weeks?
I mean, if it's safe to do so, then it's really exciting, isn't it? I can't see it returning until late June or July, just because of the lead-in time some of the teams will need to be ready. You know, they've lost training weeks, they've been on lockdown, so I think they'll probably give them the May and June to kind of get ready, because I think they're still in phasing out of lockdown as well. So it's not like, right, turn around, let's go, lads. But I mean, it is exciting that league will probably get played, and I think everyone's been kind of dying for some netball, so it's good that we'll get to see some.
What do you reckon about fans attending? Do you think that'll be a thing?
I doubt it, and I think we've spoken about this before in terms of what the different priorities are for different leagues. For Super League, the teams really want fans there because that's where they generate their revenue. In Super Netball, they have a big TV deal, so they want to get something played regardless of whether fans are there or not, because that's their revenue stream. So I can't imagine fans will be there. Who knows by the time they get to the later rounds whether that might be possible, but I imagine it'll start behind closed doors.
How complicated does this whole thing make the international calendar?
Well, I think what we've just been discussing earlier, saying that, use this time and this opportunity to rejig the international calendar. We need those international games to be played. Everybody wants to see them. Everybody wants to play them. But if everything gets pushed back, it is going to encroach on the international calendar and games that have to be played. So yeah, it's a really difficult juggling act. Somebody's spinning those plates somewhere, but somebody or all the governing bodies could make it easier for everybody.
And I think you look at what was planned for the international calendar and the September-October series were in Australia and New Zealand. At the minute, they're not letting people in. So even if it gets played, it might have to be moved. You might have to go to South Africa, potentially come to England, who knows. But I imagine that's kind of going to come after Super Netball's decision, what they do with the international calendar.
And a lot of it, obviously, health first, but a lot of people are worried financially. One group of people who seem to have come off financially better in this situation, we heard Caroline saying it earlier, are the lower paid players. Sarah, what do you make of this? Because we know Stacey was in a bit of a predicament a few weeks back over, she was an overseas player and wasn't receiving support from the government. So how is she?
Well, I think what's happened in Australia was initially everyone took a 70% pay cut. So if you were a higher paid player, you had a lot less money. But you still had some money. If you were a lower paid player, 70% pay cut took you down to very, very little. So you probably felt it more. Now what's happened is because they've got a kind of furloughing scheme, every player's been guaranteed, I think, $1,500 per fortnight or whatever they get paid. And everyone will get paid a minimum of 50% of their wage, but it means that $1,500 is probably much more than 50% for the lower paid players, so they're actually better off, whereas the higher paid players, they're taking a 50% pay cut and much worse off in this scenario. So it's kind of flipped. At the beginning the lower paid players were probably suffering slightly more. Now your higher paid players are suffering more. And I think there's a little bit of unrest about that, but it's hard to say what the right thing to do is. I think they're kind of cobbling together a plan as they go, as everyone else is.
Yeah, it's unprecedented times, isn't it? And not everyone can be happy, but we're trying to strike compromise everywhere. Mags, do you think netball in Australia is feeling the pressure from other sports to return?
I don't think they're feeling the pressure. Personally, I don't think they're feeling the pressure. I think they just want to get it back on the road and get the game played. I think they're seeing that there are other sports talking about coming back, and as a consequence, they want to start up as well. But I don't think they're feeling the pressure. If we're just talking about financial pressure, then yeah, they're feeling that, because we've already discussed the fact that finances drive a lot of this. And I worry about the finances driving it more so than the health and safety of the individuals. But I think they just want to get the game back on court, and that's where everybody wants it.
Of course they do. And Sarah, as a coach, how do you feel about returning to action? Are you ready and raring for it? Or are you apprehensive? What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's the same as everyone. You kind of get to a point where this sort of new normal, you almost can't imagine going back to your old.
Yeah.
So I think where we're at the minute with it, in terms of lightning stuff, we're kind of now saying we want to be ready either way. So we want to be ready. If this goes on we get told on Sunday we're going to go into lockdown for another 3 weeks, okay, we're ready to deal with that. Likewise, if we're told we're going to start loosening restrictions, right, we're ready to get back. But it's a difficult balancing act to say right, everybody, stay ready to play in potentially 6 weeks' time, but also be ready that our season could be over. Like that's just
it's like no man's land, isn't it, for you?
Yeah.
You're sort of stuck in limbo.
And I imagine that's pretty demotivating as well, because you kind of go, what are we working towards?
Yeah, and it is tough because as athletes, generally you always have a goal. So, you know, you start a season, your goal is to, you know, win the league or, you know, make top four, whatever. And there's always a time limit on that goal. Like by May, we'll know if we're in playoffs. By June, it's the finals, whatever. It's always moving. It's like, oh, we'll find out more in a couple of weeks. And then you find out this more and it's just the same. And so it's just a constantly moving situation, which is difficult because athletes like certainty and routine and goals and ticking things off, and none of that is possible during this time.
No, it's true. We're all just kind of living in this weird limbo land, aren't we? We've heard New Zealand has relaxed, obviously, its social distancing rules. Do you see the ANZ being one of the first sports leagues to return? Because there's been a lot of reports about Australia-based rugby players from New Zealand even flying back to Australia to start their training again.
Well, I think firstly, you know, hats off to the government who were able to lock down their country to start off with, and the actual deaths in New Zealand are remarkably low. So thank God for that.
Yeah.
And yeah, why not? If they've relaxed their rules and they feel that it's safe for them to start their sport, I think it will still start off behind closed doors without fans to start off with. But if they're in that position and they're ready to rock and roll, then great. That would be fabulous.
Girls, can I just say as well, how grateful are we all going to be, like when sport actually does return properly, when we can go and enjoy it the way we used to? Do you not think it feels like a distant dream?
Yeah, and it also gives you a reference point for what day it might be.
Yeah.
You don't have to look at your phone or something to work out what day it is.
Or if you're me, you don't have to depend on the weekend tingle to go, the sport this weekend. Yeah. Do you know what? Thank you so much for that, girls. We won't keep you much longer because we know that you two have got hectic schedules at the minute. But have you got any shout outs you'd like to give?
Just on the back of what happened last week with our girls on the Rhinos pathway, they were able to complete their challenge. I think it was something like 2,100, 2140 kilometres between all the Super League franchises, either running, cycling or what have you, raising money for helpers, carers, NHS, and I'm so proud of them. They smashed it. They did
amazing. Good work. And what about you, Sarah?
Nope. No, I don't think I have. Got no mates. Do nothing.
Do you not want to do a shout out maybe to all the Netball Nation listeners who are listening to us and supporting us through this pandemic?
All right, Emma. Yeah, make me feel bad now. Jeez, laying it on thick. Yeah, I'd love to. No, generally though, I think we talked about it earlier in terms of like these kind of shows keeping going is really important for netball. And I think we've talked previously about the likes of Sasha Corbin, Laura Malcolm, putting content out there. A lot of the Aussie-based girls are doing it now. Stacey's put some stuff out. Jo has. Jay Clark's put some skills out. Staying connected as a sort of netball family, I think, is really important. So thank you to everyone that's listened and engages and sends messages and things like that. But also, you know, thanks to the wider netball community for keeping positive and for supporting each other through this, because I think it's shown how supportive the sport is generally. It's not been I want to protect what training I do and I don't want people to see. It's been like, we're all bored, minimal equipment, let's show everyone what we can do. And I think that's just been a massive positive.
All in this together. Now then, girls, I've not forgotten that duet. What are we singing? I'm joking. I was going to say we'll have that to look forward to.
We'll come back next week with like Ebony and Ivory or something.
Yes.
Pepsi and Shirley.
Well, do you know what? It's been really nice to see inside your living rooms anyway.
Me too.
So thank you for bringing us into our homes. I've got no pictures on my walls, so I look a bit dull and boring by comparison. Before we say ta-ra to you from this week's show, here's a reminder of a fab competition that we've got for you. To keep your team netballing with Netball Nation, powered by Netball UK and supported by ASICS, we are giving you the chance to win a pair of professional Double F black netball trainers for you and every single member of your team, so that when we're finally back together, you'll all be wearing the shoes and it'll let you be the best on court. We are also going to print ID names to every pair so you don't get them mixed up. Very fancy, very fancy. To enter this, all you've got to do is go to www.keepnetballing.uk, where you can also read all the T's and C's. So get entering now. Now then, thank you so much for listening to Netball Nation, powered by Netball UK, meaning you can hashtag keep netballing from home. Thank you, girls.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Sarah.
See
Take
ya.
care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
This is Netball Nation.